Okay, so the new assignment has been given. Couple of announcements first. Because of several student requests, I have um, extended the deadline for today's assignment till midnight today. Secondly, after I finish discussing the next assignment that is already there on Moodle, after I finished my lecture, there will be another doubt clearing session conducted by Mr. Rajat Sadhuka, who is TA in the theory course, but he has agreed to conduct a doubt clearing session for your convenience. He will particularly focus on the this sequential circuits, common mistakes. Okay, what to avoid, what is the result of uh, writing code in different 2 to 3 different ways, etc. Many of you have been emailing me your codes individually and asking to debug. That's a very difficult exercise. I've tried to cater to that request as much as possible. But what I can notice is, other than one case which was happening because there was some issue with the IAC tool, the code was correct, the issue was with the IAC tool. Other than that, most of the situations, your understanding of the Verilog language is not complete. And you are making common mistakes. For example, during lecture, I told that, I think Professor DM also mentioned that there can be multiple always blocks in a code, in a module. That does not mean that the destination registers inside the multiple always blocks can be the same. Like you have a destination register in always block number 1, same destination register in always block number 2, etc., etc. That is completely wrong. Not only destination register, any reg type variable as the destination in multiple always blocks is completely wrong. That code is not supposed to compile also. Okay. Secondly, in spite of me repeatedly mentioning that please stick to the convention of implementing sequential logic using non-blocking and combinational logic using blocking inside always blocks, you are some of you are writing code without using any non-blocking statement. Now, in some cases, that will combine correctly to flip-flops. But in some cases, it might cause problems because the non-blocking assignment is not for to imply flip-flops. Okay. This has also been, the blocking assignment is not to imply flip-flops actually. It works in certain situations, but it might not work in all situations. So better you stick to the convention. Okay, so this is another point. Anyways, let's start with today's assignment. There are 3 problems. One is a purely combinational circuit. The second 2 are sequential circuit. So let me discuss them. The first one is something called a barrel shifter. Okay. What is a barrel shifter? This is a combinational circuit to perform arbitrary number of shifts in one clock cycle. This is very important. Okay, in one clock cycle. This is the difference with shift registers. Shift registers, if you want to shift n positions, it takes n clock cycles. Where is this difference? used example is, I think you have studied this SLL type instructions in MIPS, shift left, shift right, etc. They are useful. Okay. Have you been taught this circuit in your digital logic course, in your switching circuits course, students?
No, sir.
Fine. So it specifies a field. It first of all it specifies a vector. Like say, I am giving the example with 8-bit vectors. Say A7, A6, A5 up to A0, and I will consider right shifting. It also, this is the input vector. It also specifies an amount called shift, say, let me call it shift amount, SH amount, which is of the form B2, B1, B0. Okay, where each of these bits together, this thing is a 3-bit unsigned number. So if B2, B1, B0 is say 101, this implies it's a 5-bit right shift. Now, the primary observation based on which there can be different ways of implementing this circuit. Okay. In the assignment statement, I have given one common way of implementing this circuit, which is very, very efficient in terms of hardware. Why is it efficient? We will discuss it. That works based on the following observation. The observation is that shift due to this shift amount whose representation is B2, B1, B0 is shift due to S E to B2, sorry, plus shift due to B1 plus shift due to B0. Why I wrote it in this form, you will very soon realize. Now, shift due to B2 can be either 4 positions if B2 is 1, or 0 positions if B2 is 0. Shift due to B1, because they are just binary numbers. They are dependent on the place values. So the place value of B1 is 1 multiplied by 2. The place value of B2 is 1 multiplied by 2 square, or 0 multiplied by 2 square. Similarly for B1 and B0. Shift due to B1 is either 2 positions if B1 is 1, or 0 if B1 is 0. And shift due to B0 is 1 position if B0 is 0, and 0 if B0 is, sorry, if B0 is 1. So what does this in turn mean? This means that my circuit is it is possible to consider my circuit to be a cascade of 3 blocks. the first block handles only shifts due to B2, followed by a second block which handles only shifts due to B1, and followed by a third block which handles only shift due to B0. Now say what is block 1? Say block, all right, let me call it block 2, which handles these B2 shifts. Now if B2 is 1, then A7, A6, A5 up to A0, this input vector gets transformed to 0, 0, 0, 0, A7, A6, A5, A4. These are logical shifts. Okay, for simplicity, let us only do logical shifts. For both left, I am showing right shifts. For so the sign bit will not be preserved. So this will be logical shifts. Only zeros will scan in. Similarly, when you do left shifts, only zeros will scan in on the right. And if B1, if B2 is 0, then A7, A6, A5, A0 remains the same. So basically, there are, if you look at the transformed vector at the output, there are two choices. At the MSB position, it can either be 0 or A7. At the next position, it can be either 0 or A6 in this way. In the final position, it can be either A4 or A0. There are only two choices per bit position. Each of them is an if-else clause. And so each of these blue boxes, each of them is a 2-to-1 multiplexer, which is controlled by the condition B2. Okay, so each of them is a 2-to-1 multiplexer whose control signal is B2. And by connecting the data inputs of these multiplexers properly, it is quite easy with just 8 2-to-1 multiplexers to implement this. And that is exactly the architecture that has been shown. Now in this block, look at the top level in the hierarchy. The B2 block, the B2 shifts are is like 8 2-to-1 multiplexers, where the left 4 has 0 as the data input 1, and the original bit as the data input 0, and the right ones accordingly have been connected. Exactly in the same fashion, you can analyze the next cascade, which is this, the B1 block, and then finally the B0 block. Okay. So in a cascaded fashion, using extremely elegant and regular architecture, using simple building blocks of only 2-to-1 multiplexers, it is possible to implement this entire circuit. This is a right shifter. Okay. Now, there is a catch in the assignment. The assignment asks you that there is a further control signal which determines whether it will be a right shift or it will be a left shift. If it is, this control signal is called DIR, direction. Okay, this. If direction is 1, it is left shift. If direction is 0, it is right shift. So anybody, any student, how can we transform this? So basically, I have drawn you the entire circuit, except that it does not support any left shift. Okay, I have given you the circuit diagram for the entire circuit. Just that left shift has not yet been handled. Anybody has any suggestion how we can easily handle this DIR control signal?
Using a switch case statement.
That is in Verilog and structurally in terms of the hardware. Because see, this entire circuit, whatever has been shown in front of you, this is kind of a structural diagram. You can write it in any way, okay? But for this particular assignment, I would suggest you follow a structural design style. You implement the 2-to-1 multiplexer using anything. Okay, make 2-to-1 multiplexer a module. In that, you can have an if-else clause. One line code will be sufficient for 2-to-1 multiplexer. But the connectivity is, I would suggest for this assignment, do it structurally, because that will make the implementation very efficient. Otherwise, if you write high-level behavioral RTL, whether the synthesis will lead to this efficient structure is not, I'm not sure. Why I am saying that, I will come to it. What is my concern? I'll come to it. First, tell me, yes, switch case statement, you can handle DIR is correct. I am asking, what is the implication of that switch case statement based on DIR on the hardware? What extra additional hardware will be required?
Maybe flipping the 8-bit number.
I cannot hear you, so your voice is too feeble. Somebody is trying to
Maybe
speak.
flipping the 8-bit number will help.
What?
Flipping the
Flipping the
8-bit
8-bit number will help. Correct. Whatever, both the answers, what the previous student gave and what you gave, you are not giving me the answer of what is the implication on the hardware. What is the hardware implementation? How can you flip a vector from right to left? I know there are library functions in most high-level languages to do that. I am not asking about that. This assignment is about a circuit design. I am asking you, how will you do it with a circuit? What extra thing is required in this? Flipping is correct. Flipping answer is correct. How will you implement that flipping? You tell me.
Maybe 2 more levels of multiplexers.
2 levels or 1 level?
First we have to shift the first flip the A bits and then also the Y bits also.
What is the Y bits? No, Y bits. Why do you want to shift the Y bits? Flip the Y bits? You just need to I think you just need to flip the input bits. I don't think you need to flip the. So basically the idea is something like this. See, right now, this A0 input is fixed. So if I have a circuit where instead of A0, it can either be A0 or it can be 0. In this case, it can either be A1 or it can be A7. In this case, it can either be A2 or it can be A6. Will it work? And then the rest of the thing is, I mean, just the same. Will it work? Or no, will it not work? No, I think it will still might have problem. Yeah, it might be problematic. Yeah. So you shift these things and yeah, this is correct. So at this output also you do basically a same thing, kind of flipping. Okay, so at the input flipping and output flipping, if you have 2 more levels of 2-to-1 mux, just like the last student answered, I think you can easily implement it. Now, what my concern is, if you use a very high level implementation in terms of behavioral code, maybe this architecture might be implemented. I don't know. But my concern is the following. If you write very monolithic code, I'm not looking at the bidirectional. I'm just looking at the this unidirectional barrel shifter, okay, just the right shifter. In the right shifter, how many 2-to-1 multiplexers we have needed? This 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have needed 24 to 1 muxes. Now 2-to-1 muxes can be implemented very efficiently using 6 CMOS transistors. Okay. There is a way to implement 2-to-1 muxes using 6 CMOS transistors. It's slightly peculiar, means it is not similar to other type of digital circuits that you might have implemented in your previous lab, or I don't know whether you implemented the 6 transistors 2-to-1 mux, but it is possible. So this is 24 2-to-1 multiplexers. On the other hand, there can be an alternative implementation. That alternative implementation takes a 3-bit control signal B2, B1, 0, and for each of the outputs, say Y7, it just considers all the 8 possibilities. This is a valid design. Okay, so if this is data input 7, input 6, input 5, up to input 0, then when you perform 7 write shifts for Y7, it will be 0, right? I mean, let us start with this. So it will be Y7 will all of them will be 0 or what? Yeah, I think in all cases it will be 0s, is it? For the MSB? So again, you can have something similar, say Y1, okay, Y1 in or Y0, the output 0. Again, there can be 7 different possibilities. Okay, when everything is 0, it is A0. When it is 1 position, it is A1. When it is 2nd position, it is A2, etc. up to A7. So this type of implementations are not very optimal, because you see this 8-to-1 mux is humongously large. First of all, nobody implements 8-to-1 muxes in a monolithic fashion. 8-to-1 muxes will be implemented in a hierarchical fashion using 2-to-1 multiplexers, and there will be like a binary tree. There will be 4 plus 2 plus 1. 7 2-to-1 muxes just to handle one of the outputs. Okay, which means for the 8 outputs you will require 56 2-to-1 muxes, unless you perform logic optimization and you will realize that because many of them are taking zeros as inputs, they can be optimized. But then your design will no longer remain regular. Each of these optimized multiplexers will have to be again checked whether they are correct in design, etc., etc. A lot of headache will come. So it is better that you adopt this regular design style with simple 2-to-1 multiplexers to design this circuit. Okay, and design a bidirectional version of this so that things are handled properly. Next, the next is a bit serial adder. Okay, what is a bit serial adder? Bit serial adder, have you been taught? I'm pretty sure you have been taught, right, students, in the previous course, or maybe maybe Professor BBB has also taught it. Hello, are you there?
Yes, Rajat, we can
Yes,
hear.
sir.
Yeah, please answer because I cannot see your face. Has BBB taught bit serial adder or he has not taught in class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, taught. Then I will now very quickly just go through it. It is something like this, where you have a full adder circuit. The carry in is basically comes from the output of a flip flop. The carry out is the D input of the flip flop. Okay, and you have two further uh, inputs A and B. Here it has been asked that they should come from 8-bit shift registers, I think. So each of them will shift right. 1 bit at a time will reach this full adder. A sum will be generated. That sum in turn will feed into another shift register which will also shift right. So that at the end of 8 clock cycles, we will have the entire 8-bit sum at the proper position. And you will have the C out available at the output. Okay. This is used at the cost of extremely fast operation because your critical path delay is only one full adder. Okay, it's just the opposite paradigm of ripple carry adder. With ripple carry adder, your critical path is a big headache. Okay, to solve that problem, you introduce carry look ahead adder, but then carry look ahead adder, the gates fan-in start getting so large that you cannot accommodate them beyond a certain point. This is an alternative sequential adder which says that, well, I would be able to do the addition using only one full adder and one this flip flop. That's all. These shift registers as such are not part of the original circuit. They are just auxiliary circuits which are providing the inputs. Fine. So within 8 clock cycles, I will finish an 8-bit addition. The clock cycles will be very fast. They can be made fast because your critical path delay is just one full adder long. Okay. If you had done it using ripple carry, it would have been 8 full adder long. For this case, n-bit addition is n full adders in a ripple carry design. So it's extremely slow. So here you can do fast addition, but at the in a sequential manner. The third one is the Booth multiplication algorithm, which have also been probably taught in class. Okay, and also many of you are having a lot of confusion about synchronous and asynchronous loading and resetting capabilities. For this last two assignments, 2 and 3, just adopt a synchronous load and synchronous reset. Load will have the maximum preference. So it will be like always at POSH clock. If load, do this, else if reset, make things 0, else do this. Like that you write your sequential logic. Okay. And if you have a FSM also, you need a FSM, you think, for as a controller, in that also you follow. Another point I forgot to mention in my last lecture, please do not mix synchronous reset and asynchronous reset in the same design. This is a strict no-no, okay? This is completely disastrous design style to adopt both synchronous and asynchronous reset in the same design. Please avoid it. If you are going for asynchronous reset, do the entirely asynchronous. If you are going for synchronous reset, which will result probably in lesser overhead, go for synchronous. But in the entire design, the controller, the flip-flops, the shift registers, everything should follow the same reset style. Okay. And Booth multiplier algorithm, I don't need to go through. Basically, you check 2 bits at a time and you take a decision of whether to perform addition or subtraction, regardless of you start with double size registers to hold the state, and finally in that by repeated addition, subtraction, or shifting, or only shifting, finally you have the result as a product. Okay. So you have already coded this in MIPS. You have been taught this in class. So nothing to teach. For the addition and subtraction followed by shifting, remember that addition subtraction followed by shifting has to happen inside one clock cycle. Please remember that. Okay. Please remember that. As students, what is the advantage of Booth's multiplier? Why do people implement it? What advantage does it give?
It is fast and it works for sign multiplication also.
Anything about it being more efficient?
To reduce the number of additions.
Yeah, it is fast in what sense? What sense is it fast? So yeah, I agree that it can handle 2's complement numbers. That is not an advantage. Okay, it is. There are other algorithms for 2's complement multiplication also. So well, if you want to call it an advantage, it is an advantage. But what is in what sense is it fast? Yeah, somebody said fast. So why is it fast?
So it takes n clock cycles instead of n square if we do it like a normal
N
long
square.
multiplication.
Why would you take n square clock cycles?
You're like we have n additions and n shifts.
Yeah, in additions and in shifts. So you are saying so that's what makes it fast.
Instead of
But
looking at each bit, it sees one, runs off one, and then it takes the advantage.
yeah, but still it even if it finds say 2 consecutive zeros or 2 consecutive ones, it still has to shift, right? It cannot save any clock cycle there, right?
Yeah, you are on the right track. Like you are talking about consecutive ones and all that. So you are on the right track there. But can you be a bit more precise?
See, first of all, if you, I mean, I don't know whether it has been taught um, for unsigned multiplication, there are very, very efficient n-bit unsigned multiplication. There is very, very efficient n-bit n-cycle these things operations. Okay. So even if you consider an say the school book multiplication algorithm, that has no shifting. I mean, the partial products are when you for each multiplier bit or each multiplier digit, whatever, the contribution of each multiplier bit is already shifted and put in the proper position. Okay, so there are n squared terms, that is correct. But when if you say that it gives me order n delay in place of order n squared delay, that is completely wrong, because order n squared delay okay, it should not come in the picture in a sequential scheme. So for circuits in which it is difficult to perform addition and shifting together in the same clock cycle, Booth's multiplier can be problematic actually, because you would require first to perform an addition, then in the next clock cycle you would perform a shift. Booth multiplication algorithm is inherently a sequential algorithm. Okay, so it will take multiple clock cycles, that is sure. Question is, how many clock cycles will it take? If the circuit, as was in the very old days, there were circuits which could not perform the combined operation of addition or subtraction and shifting in one clock cycle, there it can actually take more clock cycles than n. Okay, except in situations where it finds 0, 0 and 1, 1 in consecutive positions, it shifts. It just shifts and skips the addition subtraction steps. This gentleman Booth, who developed this algorithm, was neither a mathematician nor a computer scientist. I think he had some biology or medicine, this kind of background. Whatever, when he was trying to do certain multiplication, this was in the 50s or 40s, the calculator system he had was very basic. He did not have any computer, because at that time computer was a very specialized thing, only available to military and very high-end scientific research. It was not available. So this person had some rudimentary electronic calculator kind of a thing, or electromechanical calculator, something like that, which could not perform multiplication, which could not perform addition, subtraction and shifting combined in one clock cycle. So that he observed that this is causing him to perform a n-bit multiplication in more than n clock cycles. He said, fine, that is inevitable, I cannot do much, but can I still, given this constraint, make my circuit slightly more effective? How can I do that? Well, he said that let me see if I have consecutive ones or consecutive zeros, can I make it more efficient? That maybe at least one of the steps out of the two of addition, subtraction or shifting can be skipped. And then he developed his algorithm, which showed that, well, if you are lucky and there are lots of consecutive ones and or consecutive zeros in your bit string, in the numbers represented in 2's complement that you are working with, then yes, then sometimes you will be lucky. However, in circuits like modern days, you will be building circuits. People have already built it earlier. If it is possible to build circuits that can perform addition, subtraction combined with shifting in one clock cycle, Booth's multiplication does not offer any advantage. it still takes n clock cycles. And if you say that, sir, it is a great improvement because at least it is not taking n square clock cycles, that's a completely wrong understanding of sequential multiplication algorithms. Sequential multiplication algorithms are never supposed to take n square clock cycles, first of all. The worst case you can go for it is n clock cycles at current technology. That is the maximum. I mean, you can go less than n clock cycles, but n clock cycles is kind of maximum. For example, in the, say, the modern 64-bit microprocessors that you have, you can multiply to 64-bit integers, okay, and have a 128-bit product. Okay. So if you say, look, I have instructions that can do the multiplication in less than 64 square clock cycles, people will laugh. They will say 64 square is anyway, it's a very large number. I mean, that is completely useless. So the integer multipliers that you have inside the modern x86 64 processors, in the worst case, they might use 10 to 15 clock cycles. In the worst case, even floating, I mean, maybe they will use even 2-3 clock cycles for integer. In floating point, depending on the situation, say for division, it can take up to 40 clock cycles because of the peculiar way the division algorithms work. But in general, it does not take 64 clock cycles even. It takes much less than that. Okay. So you should understand what is the advantage of Booth's multiplier algorithm. The advantage was substantial in very old days, like 50, 60 years back, when the circuit design was very rudimentary. Currently, it's a clever scheme, but it offers no substantial advantage. Advanced multiplier designs have been performed, like these are called tree multiplier, like Wallace tree multipliers and those things combined with Booth encoding, which can give you a much better performance. They do not need n clock cycles like these things work. Anyway, so that's it. Any question about the assignment, students? Today's assignment?
Sir, what is the deadline of the assignment?
I have given you exactly 1 week deadline, which is next Wednesday, 11:55 or so. Okay, another important assignment. We will send out email about it. We will probably need to discuss a little bit among us 3 teachers. One of the teachers is Professor Devdeep Mukhopadhyay, is not present right now, but we will meet and we will send you an email. Just advance notification. Your lab test will be held next week. Okay, next Wednesday, 1 week from now. So HD, should we hold it next Wednesday or next Friday? What do you want?
I think if we opting for Wednesday can be better, because I think on Friday they will have more number of other exams. Because
Okay.
that is the exam week and many people will have exams, and many may choose Friday because it's the last working day before the vacation.
So, but isn't the exam supposed to happen inside the class hours?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just thinking for students having many exams on the
Okay, no problem. Like
smaller on Wednesday.
in core theory, we will have our exam on Monday actually. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah, I understand your point. Yeah.
I mean, both are fine. Let's ask the students also what
Students, what do you prefer?
So the thing is that on Wednesday, I don't think that there is a test for a subject.
Right now, there is no test schedule, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But the thing is that on Wednesday, you have given the deadline for the assignment 6 that we were just discussing.
First assignment I have solved for you, so I should get the marks. I have already solved it. I mean, what else is there? You tell me. Entire circuit diagram is given. Just add 2 additional layers of multiplexers or something trivial like that. I mean, come on. First assignment, how much time will it take you to solve? And look at the second assignment. This second assignment is simpler than the other this shift register assignment that you have done in the previous assignment. Okay, and that also you know the circuit earlier from earlier course, and anyways it has been taught this in this course also by Professor BBB, and I have drawn the circuit. It consists of one full adder and one flip flop. What is the, come on? I mean, see, if you are scared of this level of assignments, how will you solve assignments in a time bound manner during the exam? 1 week from now, or say 9 days from now, there will be an exam. How will you solve those problems then? There also
Sir, actually,
there will be a time bound, right? So you have to solve it and submit within the time bound.
sir, actually about that, so can the exam be taken sometime after the DP break? Because like this exam, as you said, is of weighted 60%, and then we were expecting it to be on.
No, maybe in that case we can take 2 exams, one before, like yeah, I mean, yeah, I understand your point. My intention of having the first exam before puja was that we will have another exam after the puja. But yeah, so SD, what do you think?
I mean, let's have 2 exams.
Yeah, we should have 2 exams actually. So in that case, the good thing is, even if you say 30% weightage in this, 30% weightage in the second one, in that case, even if you perform not up to the mark in one of the exams, in the second exam you will have a chance to
having
do
one
better.
exam means everything. I mean, your grade is a direct function of that one single exam. In this pandemic environment, let's not do that, right?
Yeah, that is not
That is
desirable.
actually better for you.
It is better for you. Actually, you know, this problem happened in last year's class. Last year's class, we had only one exam, if I remember correctly.
Somebody has a COVID issue, or somebody's family may have an issue, and then his grade gets affected.
Yeah, exactly. It happened like that.
Right.
And
We
I
have
think
been
there for
seeing
a
this.
few
So, I mean, they should
who could not attend that one single exam, we had to arrange another exam, make-up exam. It is very, very inconvenient actually. Inconvenient for both the students as well as the teachers. So,
sir, actually, it will be very tough to give an exam on Wednesday itself. We have 2 exams on Thursday, sir.
Then you give on Friday. That's what I was asking.
Give on Friday.
Then you do it on Friday.
Sir, anytime next week would be really tough. So because for all the other exams, we were told like 1 week, 1 month in advance, and
next week is the exam week. See, this all unlike other semesters which were conducted online. This semester, IIT administration has specifically indicated 3 separate exam weeks. That's why we are holding the theory exam. All teachers are holding theory exam within this week. What would have happened if you had mid-semester exams? There also exams would have been held in close proximity in a few number of days. Just think of it as if mid-semester exams are happening.
But during mid-semesters, we don't have any classes.
No, but classes we are Nick. So see, if you want, see, I'm saying just from the theory perspective, okay, from the lab perspective. Anyways, Friday we are not having class this Friday, and next Wednesday, if you want, we can skip the class as a study leave for you, because you will have an exam. We will not give you any new assignment next.
Right.
Okay, so even if we give an assignment, it will be basically a long assignment which you will have time to work on during Durga Puja and after Durga Puja. It will continue for the rest of the semester. So you don't need to bother that, okay, we are being given extra assignments. And another thing is that, see, usually the problems we give in the lab exams are short programs to write. They are similar to whatever assignments have been given before in the lab. Very, very similar. That is a general policy. You have just now, so there will be one problem from MIPS and one problem in Verilog. Okay. So you are right now, you are in practice. After Durga Puja, your MIPS practice will be less. You will be away from touch from MIPS programming for quite some time, for a month or more, maybe 2 months. Again, you will need to brush up on MIPS programming. Right now, you have written a theory exam on MIPS. You will have another theory exam on Monday. For that, you are also probably brushing up a little bit of MIPS and arithmetic algorithms and these things. So my suggestion is have the exam on next Friday. No class
All right,
on
sir.
this Friday and no class on next Wednesday. No new assignment. Means new assignment might be uploaded, but no compulsion on you to solve it fast. Okay. No deadline. I mean, deadline will be much, much later.
So just one more clarification.
So then both the tests will have the same thing, like MIPS and Verilog, MIPS and Verilog.
Probably the second test only have Verilog.
Okay, sir.
So can you please repeat? Your voice wasn't clear. What will be in the test? MIPS or Verilog or both?
Usually we give one MIPS and one Verilog. SD, what do you think? We can give only MIPS this time in this test, and next test we can give only Verilog?
That is fine.
That is also possible. What do you want,
So
students? What do you want? You tell us. I mean, quickly.
You want MIPS and Verilog or only
MIPS and Verilog, or only Verilog, or only MIPS?
In my case, like I'm somewhat comfortable with MIPS. Like we have done 4 assignments,
MIPS.
but
Okay,
Verilog
okay,
only one.
okay. Verilog, you will have more practice with more assignments that you give after DP. Then no problem. So let us have only MIPS. Okay. So then there will be two problems on MIPS that you would need to solve in 3 hours or so. Okay.
So just
Yes.
one more
2 hours we will decide.
clarification.
Yes.
Yes, sir. So earlier, sir, in the earlier lab, you told that the weightage of the test will be 40%, and like right now,
Weightage of the test will be 60%.
okay, 60. Okay, so 30
So
plus 30.
two tests, 30 plus 30.
Okay, sir.
If
Happy?
the students perform horribly badly, which I hope won't be the case, then we can consider reducing the weightage to maybe say 50%, but definitely it will be 50%, at least 50%.
Okay, sir.
Exams, see, UG level exams are 50%, at least. Assignment based things, of course, it has weightage, but exams should be 50% at UG level. Okay. It's more or less the standard formula everywhere. It is in a way it can be unfair, because if your performance on that day is slightly not up to the mark or not as per expectation, your grades might suffer. But that's why if you have 2 exams, you'll have chance to kind of make up if one of the exams is not as per your expectation. Think about a theory course where you have a 50-30-20 typical weightage. For UG courses, there is no liberty of the teacher also. The standard formula is NSEM 50%. If your NSEM is not up to the mark because of any, whatever is the reason, like some issues in the family, your personal health on that day was not okay, you had fever or some other problem. I mean, your performance might be bad, which is in a way it is not. In a way, it is unfair, but that's the reality. That's what happens every year in normal semesters. So better have 2 exams, one mid-sem and one end-sem, like one lab 1 before DP, lab 2 before after DP. So students, is it okay if we have only MIPS programming in the first exam? Are you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
We will not give
Yes, sir.
these
Yes, sir.
esoteric programs where you where you need to use these floating point registers and these high low, all these double register things. Those things we will not give. Okay, so I mean the stuff that has been taught by BBB probably in your it will be straightforward uh, assignments like you have done in your previous lab assignments. Okay. Actually, this year the assignments are slightly easy because last year or maybe last year or previous to last year, I remember we gave one assignment on this IEEE 754 implementation in Verilog. That was quite difficult because there are these support for rounding modes and this and that. Some peculiar conditions arise. You have to detect them. You have to make the proper flags active at that condition. All these complications were there. Okay, first of all, you need to encode the numbers in IEEE. Is already encoded at the input, but then you need to interpret the numbers in that way. So it's even addition becomes very difficult because your exponent has to be adjusted, otherwise you cannot add. All these peculiarities are there. I think we gave only addition, subtraction. We did not give multiplication and division in floating point, but even addition, subtraction in IEEE 754 is quite difficult. So this year, actually, the Verilog problems we are solving are slightly on the easier side because I have not given 754, and last semester I think we covered dividers. Before Durga Puja, students had solved problems on dividers. What happened this year was you took too much time in solving the first assignment on adders. That usually we give 1 week. That you took, I think, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks almost to solve, which is eating up time. That's why all this problem that there should be one more assignment on arithmetic circuit. We will see if we can arrange that. If we cannot arrange that, then we will move straight forward to your large assignment on this processor design. But at least integer division, I think we'll try to cover at some point in future in the lab. Either IEEE 754 adder subtractor or integer divider. One of them I think we should try to cover. Okay, so MIPS 32 programming, that's the deal. That's final then.
And so for similar reasons, can the current assignment be slightly postponed as well? Because like we have tests on Thursday, so
that will decide.
Possible.
That will decide based on the situation. Current assignment means what? The 5 or 6. Right now, today I discussed 6. Are you talking of 5?
No, sir, I'm talking about assignment 6, the one that we discussed right now.
No. Yeah. This one I see 5. We have already extended deadline till midnight today.
Yeah.
6. Why do you want to extend it? Why do you want to extend it? You tell me. What difficulty is there in the first 2 problems? See, one of the major things you have to learn in Verilog is, as you solve more and more assignments, you build up a repository or library of the useful building blocks. For example, you have by now you should have a library which has components like shift registers, full adders, standalone D flip-flops, etc. already available. You just need to glue together these components, instantiate them multiple times, and your circuit will work. Shift register, if you have solved the assignment number 5, you should have that ready-made available for assignment number 6. If you have done asynchronous reset, you just need to change it to synchronous reset. That's all. And those who have done synchronous reset design style, you don't need to do anything extra. So there is no need to reinvent the wheel. All of you have substantial experience in general programming using whatever, I don't know, C, C++, Python, Java, whatever that you have done in different courses, assignments, your own projects, personal projects. Do you reinvent the wheel every time? You do something once that becomes part of your repository, right? That you just reuse. You know that you have spent sufficient time implementing and debugging that module. I will reuse that module. For the first time you are implementing a shift register, yes, it takes a lot of time to implement and to debug. But the second problem again, which uses the same design block, why should you treat it as a similarly complicated problem as the first problem? Because the first problem is already solved. You have the correct debugged version of that module available with you. So in my opinion, the second problem in today's assignment is much easier than what you have solved in the previous assignment. And the first problem is tricky because you have to come up with you have to think through it like I just showed. But then the entire design is given in front of you. I mean, what more do you want?
All right, sir.
Okay. Look at the first problem, one row. You can think of one row out of the 3 rows. Each row is, you can think of consisting of 8 2-to-1 multiplexers to be a single module. Then you have to instantiate these 3 modules, one after the other, and just properly connect their inputs. That's all. At the input layer, you might need another layer of multiplexers. At the output layer, you might need another layer of multiplexers, which is driven by this direction control signal, DIR. That's it. And this 2-to-1 multiplexer you must have used. There are code has been made available to you in the slides, etc. So no need to re-implement it again.
Hello, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. What is the question? Any question? So, my concern is this. I can see at the end of 1 week, next Wednesday, if many students are raising a concern that I need more time, I can extend deadline. That is not the problem. But then my concern will be that you are not learning Verilog efficiently. One of the skills is speed that you cannot deny. How to design correctly at speed, that is one of the skill sets. Again and again, if you need to go back and see how to write the code for a D flip-flop, even after like 2 months, okay, we are ending September, then that's a concern. Okay, that's a problem. Right? That means your effort is, at least for those of you who are having this problem, that becomes questionable. Maybe one of your group members is putting extra additional effort to make up for your lack of effort, but then you will suffer during the lab exams. because your lack of skill will get caught when there will be a time-bound exam.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So, like, I have a proposal. Like, many of us have travel plans. Hello.
I could not hear you. I think I got.
Sir, many of us has travel plans on Friday.
Oh.
So, like, it was like the flight is at around 5 or 6. So, like,
Travel plans means where? From campus? Are you in campus? No, you mean personal travel plans? Hello?
yes, sir.
Yeah.
That is difficult to cater to.
So,
What to do? They are saying that Friday second half is. See, earlier we used to take this into consideration because classes were physical, and the weekend before the Durga Puja or Friday second half, most students said I have a flight to catch or I have a train. That we said we agreed with. But in an online semester, it's
so but the problems would be similar, right?
unless you are in campus and you are going back for Durga Puja vacation, that is a different thing. HD, what to do in that case?
So, like, test at Wednesday. Like, Wednesday we have lab at 2 to 5. So that.
Are you saying you are having travel plans on Friday second half or Friday evening?
Evening, sir.
Okay. So then, I mean, can I assume everybody is available 2 to 4?
So,
SD, let us do it on Wednesday.
I don't have a problem. We can do it on.
Let us do it on Wednesday.
Yes, sir,
The reason I'm saying is
yeah.
we have already
Actually,
cut
we were
down the
thinking
syllabus of
Wednesday only. Only somebody said so. We moved to Friday.
let us do it on Wednesday. Next Wednesday, 2 to 4, MIPS exam. Okay, 2 hours, no Verilog, only MIPS programming. Okay, that is final.
So, isn't the test for 3 hours, like 2 to 5? Like,
That we will decide depending
will
on
decide.
how long the question paper is or environment problems are there.
And your so exam 2 to 4 Wednesday, and your assignment deadline is Rajat, Friday, right?
Right now, assignment deadline is Wednesday. I can extend it till Friday. That I can do. Yeah. So let me do one thing. I will extend the assignment deadline, this assignment till next Friday. Okay. So in exchange of you, because you will have an exam on Wednesday.
So I think this is a fair solution. Let's
maybe. Yeah. I will extend it till Friday midnight. Next Friday midnight, which is sufficient time.
Yes, sir. That would be. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So those of you who will be going for vacation, you can still code actually sitting on your flight. Carry your laptop, code, and when you reach, you submit. Hopefully by midnight you will reach your hotel, then you submit. Okay, fine.
Sir, instead of Friday, can you do it till Sunday, because we will have a lot of exams on Thursday and Friday. So extending till Friday won't.
Till Sunday.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Sunday midnight. So basically, almost you basically want to code when you are going into the pandals to watch the Durga. I can understand. Fine. Want to carry your laptops? That's good. Okay, I will. So that will be 10th midnight. Okay, I will extend it till 10th midnight. This is ridiculous. Okay, I mean, if for this assignment you require 11 days, you are in bad shape. This much I can tell you. I don't know how we will perform in the MIPS test, but if this is your level of efficient programming in Verilog, in the second lab test, you will have a very tough time, which will be only on Verilog. You will have a tough time because this assignment, I intentionally made it lightweight. I did not include anything on floating point or dividers. Just because your exam, you have your next exam week. I mean, next week is your exam week. Intentionally, I made it lightweight. This is a 40-mark assignment. Previous assignment was, I think, 60 marks. This assignment is a lightweight assignment, relatively lightweight. If you are saying for this assignment you require 11 days, that's very unfortunate. So right now you will laugh that, okay, we convinced our teachers to extend it till 11, I mean till 10th. But in those of you who are not taking the coding seriously, you will have a tough time in the second lab test. This much I can tell you. And that is the way every year we kind of catch those who know programming and those who don't know programming. Those who have worked for the entire semester and those who have just taken it easy and dependent on their partners' hard work. Because in the lab assignments, most groups get the similar marks. As soon as you take an exam, things are clear. Who knows coding and who does not know coding. Okay, fine. No problem. But remember, this what you are asking is too much of time. This will, if this is your level at after 2 months of Verilog practice with Verilog, it will be a problem later on, because the next assignment would also be substantially large. It will ask you to implement a single cycle processor. Okay, so it will be quite large. There also you will have issues. Fine then. So now the TA Rajat Sadhuka will give you a tutorial on Verilog, doubt clearing tutorial with slides, I believe. Rajat, you have slides available?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you please check whether you can share your slides now? Yeah.
Sir, can you see my screen?
Yes.
The slides?
Perfect. Yes. It is perfectly visible. Yes.
Okay.
Blocking and non-blocking assignments, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Fine. So students, myself and SD, I think we can leave now, right?
Yeah, can now leave.
So we will inform you about the test through email, and whether it will be a 2-hour test or 3-hour test, that we'll see.
Excuse me, sir. So I had a question about the design choices that we make. It's regarding the previous assignment only. So in the lecture that you took in the previous lab class, you said that it is also fine if we merge everything inside one always block. So we can still do that, right, sir?
Yes, as long as it is correctly done, you can do it.
All right, sir.
But
thank you, sir.
other than very simple circuits like counters and shift registers and
Yes.
standalone flip-flops, it is not
Yes.
recommended.
Oh, okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Got it, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so we will see the actually. Let me reiterate the blocking and non-blocking statement once. So basically, in case of blocking statements, the executions are done one by one, like what you see in C program or any scripting language. And in case of non-blocking statements, all the statements are executed parallelly. Now, let us take a design example like a circuit I am showing, and let us see how different writing can put you into different errors. So basically, let us implement this pipelining register where in a clock tick, Q3 should get Q2, Q2 should get Q1, and Q1 should get the value of D in a clock tick. So assume that initially I have D equals to 0, Q1 equals to 1, Q2 equals to 0, and Q3 equals to 1. So the moment a clock ticks, I should get Q3 0, Q2 1, Q1 0, and D should be 1, assuming D equals to 1. Now, suppose if you write the same code, if you want to write the Verilog code like this. So if you write with Q3, Q2, and Q1 as range, and if you write it like this, then basically this will be interpreted as a single register with D as input and Q3 as output. The reason being, you are using blocking statements, and basically the synthesizer will consider that D will be finally get assigned to Q3. That's why it will remove all the intermediate things and it will just boils down to D to Q3. So this is one error that you should avoid. So the right convention would be, when you write a sequential logic, always use non-blocking statements, and when you write combinational logic, you should use blocking statements. So this is first error type that you are getting. Like when you write this kind of thing, that you will actually land up into this design. What is the second error? Second error is, suppose if you write these statements in different different always blocks. So if what will happen is, suppose if you do this, then all these always block will execute concurrently. Now in this condition, D will assign to Q1. You don't know. The engine will execute all these blocks in different order. So assume that always at POSH clock age, Q1 equals to Q2 equals to Q1 will execute it first, and then Q3 equals to Q2. In this situation, you will land up into a race condition, because if you remember, our target was to get in a tick Q3 as Q2, Q2 as Q1, and Q1 as D in a single event. But here it is not happening. Here what is happening is, you might get Q3 as Q2 first and then D as Q1, which is not desirable. So this is a race condition that will land up. So this is the second type of error that you should avoid. Same code, if you write in this form, it's again the same issue. This is a bad practice basically. So that's, whenever you write a sequential logic, you should never use blocking statements, because it will lead you into some different result which will be difficult for you to debug. Then what is the good style? So these three ways you can actually design that circuit. Use a blocking. So first, let us see the first design. If you see the first design, at positive edge clock, 3 events should happen parallelly. That is, D should assign to Q1, Q1 should assign to Q2, and Q2 should assign to Q3. Similarly, any order within the same always block is possible, but not with the other one. Even if you separate out all these blocking statements in different always block, then also it's fine. But always use a non-blocking statement. Okay. So what is the next mistake that you do generally? See, there are two variable types. One is register type variable and second one is var type variable. So register type variable has nothing to do with registers. Register type variable and var type variable, the difference is register type variable stores a value. That means you can utilize the value at some point of time. So when you are using always block, do not use var type of variables. So here out2 is my var. So I should not use var type variable in a always block. Okay. So next thing that you should avoid is So you are now writing, you will be writing now the 2:1 marks, and you will be instantiate that marks into your barrel shifter. Never instantiate a module inside an always block, because you know always blocks are executed in every signal, like whatever sensitivity list you give, whenever those signal changes only always block gets executed. But that is not your intention. Your intention is always to use an instantiation. I mean, when you should not instantiate inside always block, because the intention should be these instantiations should be used always, not when any signal gets when any signal gets changed. So when you instantiate any block, do not use inside an always block. Okay. Now another mistake is when you are actually assigning registers, do not assign in different always block, because it will give you a multiple driver issue. So what will happen is the compiler will get confused that in which block what to assign. So here if you see the X is getting assigned in two different always block, the compiler will get confused and it will not be able to do proper assignment to X. So whenever you are assigning some register variable, always use it in a single always block. Do not assign the same variable in multiple always block. Okay. So these are the common mistakes that you make. Now, if you have any doubts, you just ask me. I mean, if you have any issues.
No, sir, we don't have any doubts.
Okay, fine. So if you face any issues in any of the test bench channel, you can just drop me an email. Then we can figure out.
Sir, one thing.
Hello?
Yeah. About that, when we were using a non-blocking assignment in different always blocks, that part I didn't hear.
Okay. So this one? This
previous slide.
This is the one?
In one of the earlier slides. More. Yeah, this one. About this.
This assign statement, right?
Slide 5.
Slide 5. Okay. Yes. So basically, you can design the pipelining register that I have taken in my as my example. This particular circuit you can describe in 3 different ways. That is this. So the first one, any ordering of statement should work. In the second, see the difference between module pipe N1 and module pipe N2 is the ordering of the statements. So both this style uses non-blocking statement, but the ordering is different. But because since you are using non-blocking statement and all this because you are using different, non-blocking statement, so ordering doesn't matter, because in a single clock tick, the operations will happen concurrently. So your operations will be perfect. There is no race condition or no erroneous values will come in any of the registers. Now in module pipe N3 also you are using 3 always block, but still you are using 3 non-blocking statements. Okay. Even here also, since you are using non-blocking statements, the operations will happen concurrently. So that's why you won't get any erroneous results. But if you see my slide number 4, where not slide number 4, slide number 3, where you are using different always block, but you are using blocking statements. Here you will get erroneous statement because all these always blocks, the operation of all these always blocks happens, the priority of this, like for example, the second always block may execute earlier than the first always block. The priority depends on the compiler when it schedules. Now, if that is the case, then Q1 is assigned to Q2, and in the next, next D is assigned to Q1, which is not desirable. You might get erroneous result in that. The intention is all value assignment should happen all together concurrently. It should not happen that Q2 should get Q1 and then D should get Q1 after some time. It will result into inconsistency. So that's why you should not use non-blocking statements, blocking statements while designing sequential logic. Fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so that's all I had. So